Hi, it's Silver Rain Running Cloud here with Jeffrey Sterling, MD, and he is someone you should know. Jeffrey is an amazing person who's achieved an amazing number of things during his life so far. So let me just share a little bit of who Jeffrey Sterling, MD is. You want to get your pen and paper ready too, because at the end we're going to have a lot of contact data for you so that you can write down different ways to get a hold of Jeffrey, because he's everywhere and you're going to need your pen and paper to keep track. Jeffrey has had work in medicine, publishing, efficiency studies, youth mentorship, and with his latest publication, he's doing art, social history at Northwestern University. So he's also a historian in line of anthropologists. So it's very exciting. Jeffrey's latest book is what we're here to talk about, but we're also here to talk about Jeffrey Sterling, the man, because to be a medical doctor and then to have all these other interests is quite amazing. Jeffrey, I can't do you justice. You're a medical doctor, you're a social leader, you're a mentor, you're so many things. What inspired you to write your book, this latest book, The Social History?
Wow, what inspired me? I think that, well, first of all, you're talking about Voices and Visions, the evolution of the Black experience at Northwestern University. The most direct answer to the question is that what inspired me to write the book is that Northwestern facilitated my inspirations. It was truly the vehicle through which I escaped the inner city and was propelled to a career in medicine and a life that has been truly wonderful. So in the thoughts of contributing and giving back and looking out across the landscape to see what the voice existed. You got to remember, I was president of Northwestern's Black Alumni Association during this time for 4 years. And all of that considered, it just seemed like, because it had never been done, an effort to chronicle the over 140-year experience of Blacks, African Americans at Northwestern University needed to be done. That story needed to be told. It was striking how many of the individuals that are charged with facilitating, navigating, matriculating students through the university were unaware of the history, the legacies, the continued struggles and triumphs. And through many of those conversations over the periods in which I was at Northwestern, it just became apparent that I and my co-author, Lauren Lowry, were in unique positions to carry that information. And we would be trusted and well received to document that history and to present it. So all of that together brought together what really was nothing more than a labor of love, a way of saying thank you, and a way to secure our history and tell our stories through the prism of our experience.
Why do you think that's an important thing to do, Jeffrey, to retain history and tell it and control it?
As we say in the book, those who don't know their history are doomed to repeat it. And you've heard that many times over the course of your life, personally and professionally. Our history had not been documented, and it's a glorious history. And too often we spend time on the struggles, or we tend to look at the successes that people have had and gloss over the struggles. So the book really meant to capture the totality of the Black experience at Northwestern and to demonstrate that there's actually a continuum. There's been an evolution in how we've progressed, but there have been constant themes throughout. And the stories are very illustrative of the Black experience. Specifically, what we did is we went through some basic historical considerations, but the meat of the book is over 50 stories told via oral histories and first-person accounts of key members of the Black community dating back to the 1940s to modern day. And through their stories, through their experiences that they've shared, you get a round telling of that story. And we were just very lucky to get the entirety of the individuals that constitute the Black experience, from prominent students, successful alumni, student athletes, current and past administrators, all of the past directors of the department, the former Department of African American Student Affairs. So we were able to chronicle the history in large part. And we didn't get everybody that we would have wanted, obviously, but we are very confident that we've gotten a deliciously representative slice of the Black experience at Northwestern.
Well, that's very exciting. Can you say that book title again, Jeffrey?
Sure. Voices and Visions, The Evolution of the Black Experience at Northwestern University.
I see. You know, that's not your first interest at Northwestern. You also produced a documentary called The Takeover. Will you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Again, in looking, see, the backdrop for all of this is that the Northwestern University Black Alumni Association, for which I was president between 2014 and 2018, really sought to build an infrastructure by which we could support students, support the university, and support Black alumni. And in building that infrastructure, we just really put out the plan that we wanted to take control of our history and to use that as a platform to propel our activities and secure the future. A big part of that was appreciating that 2018 represented the 50th anniversary of the takeover of the Bursar's office. And it was literally the occasion upon which, for the very first time since 1968, we were going to have a majority of those individuals back. So one of the main programmatic initiatives that I had during my presidency was to bring them back, and we were wildly successful in doing that. However, it wasn't just enough to bring them back. We wanted to tell their story as well. So I conceived and more or less created the template for a documentary that looked at the conditions that produced that takeover in 1968, the events of the takeover in 1968, and the aftermath of the takeover and the legacy that continues into modern day. And we were able to obtain just the most wonderful set of filmmakers, Digital Cafe in Chicago, in cooperation with the university, to tell that story. And it's just a marvelous telling of the Bursar's office takeover, which is the Big Bang Theory, if you would. So I kind of, in envisioning how all of this comes together, the Bursar's office takeover was more or less the Big Bang Theory of the modern history of Blacks at Northwestern. And Voices and Visions, the book, is really the entirety of its telling. So that subset was captured in the movie, and we're looking to have it released in time for the upcoming season of film festivals internationally. The initial screenings of The Takeover, by the way, the full name is The Takeover, The Revolution of the Black Experience at Northwestern University. And it's not available for public screenings yet, but many private screenings have been made available through the university and through the Northwestern University Black Alumni Association. But it will be featured prominently in upcoming film festivals during this season, and then it will be released to the general public through PBS. We're talking with Netflix and other such entities. So we think that capturing all of this history is something that as a community, we haven't historically done as well as we've tried to put it together at Northwestern. But now that we're grounded in this way, there's really much less speculation about who we are, where we've been, and what it is we're trying to do. So we're very happy that those things were able to come together in the ways in which they did.
I see. Who we are, what we're trying to do. Who we are, where we've been, what we're trying to do. And that's quite a vision. That's quite a vision. Tell us a little bit about the Nuba Archives, which is another social history project that you have spearheaded. What's that about? The Northwestern University Black Alumni Association Archive.
Once again, the beauty of our experience and the beauty of the process of writing the book and conceiving and working to get the movie done was that we have just the most fabulous history. It's a Northwestern story. It's as great as you would imagine a story emanating from Northwestern University would be. And it's not enough to tell the stories. We really want to capture the history. There is such a rich body of legacies to be captured that can be mined for future scholars, future filmmakers, and others to get at. So we wanted to get about the business of going back, and we did this. Imagine, if you will, for Voices and Visions, we actually did 1 hour video chats, much like we're doing today, with each of those individuals, all of whom were prime movers in respective ways throughout the history of the Black experience in Northwestern. Those histories are now captured on video in total, as well as the stories that were constructed for Voices and Visions. So even beyond those stories, there are artifacts, there's documents and trophies and all types of things. Herb Kent, who you will recall went to Northwestern in 1945 and was the longest running DJ in American history in Chicago.
Sure, Herb Kent, the ladies' jet. Everybody remembers Herb Kent.
That's right, who was actually, we were the last group to honor him at the NUBA Summit and Salute to Excellence Gala before his passing. And just as an example, he donated just a beautiful bench with all types of creative engravings. So, if you can just imagine, we've just been offered.
He donated that to the university?
Yes, to the archives. Yes, to the NUBA archives. We've been able to secure information from individuals such as Katrina Adams, who's president, CEO, and chairman of the U.S. Tennis Association. Tons of people, and again, Janetta Cole, for example, is a double Wildcat. Many people associate her with Spelman and the Smithsonian Museum of African American History, but she's a Wildcat. There are so many individuals that we've been able to secure great documents, even like
Are you storing these in Northwestern's facilities?
Oh, absolutely. Once again, we are Northwestern, and everything that we do is meant to work within the confines of the university. And in doing that, we hope to have the university accommodate what our needs are, and we hope to reshape the university into something that is more accommodating to our needs. So the presence of the NUBA archives, complete with, to the university's credit, a hiring of an individual whose official title is the historian or the archivist for the Black experience. We call her the NUBA archivist, but her title is such that there is a full-time individual completely devoted to doing this work with NUBA to secure documents and histories and crafting legacies that represent the Black experience. It's a beautiful thing.
Now, why do you think this is, a couple of questions. One is, do you think that we've been ignored? Do you think that largely the African-American history, tradition, experience is different and isn't being reflected, that you actually have to do this because there's an erasure taking place? Do you feel that way?
There's a qualitative difference between saying it's been ignored versus having been neglected. In some ways, I think it was fortuitous and fortunate that it had been, because had the university taken this initiative on itself, who's to know what type of book would have been written? Who's to know what type of film would have been produced? Being able to tell our own stories through the prism of our own experience in partnership with the university, I think is the way in which all of the alumni have cited to have been the best way forward. Yes, it would have been great if this commitment had been made 50 years ago as part of the demands from the Bursar's office takeover, but the fact that we were still able to get that information at this point in time before so many of the individuals that are key, have been key in the Black experience, still means that we've gotten great information, and it wasn't too late for the bulk of the story to have been told. So it worked out well the way in which it did. Whether or not it was neglected or having been ignored, whatever the case would be, I will say that the university was enthusiastic and robust in participating and accommodating our desire to put the book together and the film together and creating the platform for the archive. So I give them credit for that. I don't judge them. I don't judge them harshly for having neglected or ignored the need for this in the past. I'm just pleased that we were able to take the bull by the horns and to own and tell these stories ourselves.
Jeffrey, your life's work spans many areas of expertise. What you're doing now is professional quality collection of cultural data. That's an anthropologist's job. You've written books. You've written books on efficiency. You're a medical doctor. Are you practicing now? You're a practicing doctor?
I practice just, again, it would be inefficient for me to have a full-time practice. What I do is I practice just enough to maintain my skill set. And my practice is manifested in one of my business units. I actually run what's called a contract management company that provides physicians who staff various emergency departments. You may not have known this, but emergency physicians, which is my specialty, don't practice in the same way in which your family practitioner or your pediatrician does. There's a group that is contracted with a hospital, and that group of emergency physicians usually is being run by some contract management group. And I oversee, own, and manage one of those entities and facilitate best practices in emergency care for a lot of people across the country.
So you don't practice medicine, you own a practice of doctors?
Yes, I do. I'm still licensed and I still practice. I just keep it to a necessary low roar.
I see. And is that to make room for your other interests, your passions?
Well, the cool part about emergency medicine at the beginning of the conversation is that, even as a full-time emergentologist, as the specialists are called, full-time for an emergency physician is about 12 days a month. So that helps with the burnout consideration, the issues with dealing with life and death on a constant basis. So even for the 20 years in which I was full-time in practice, I was chairman of 3 different what are called level 1 trauma centers, which are the highest order of emergency departments across the country. I still had plenty of time to pursue my other interests and to mainly, work on building my various companies and to be involved in philanthropy.
I see. Do you have children?
Oh, absolutely. I have 2 kids, 17-year-old son and a 13-year-old daughter.
Oh, that's delightful. Now, so many people feel like they have to pick a career and then be locked in it. You have not approached your life that way at all. You have decided that you can run any boundary you want and be everything that you are, which is a really magnificent way to look at your life. Why isn't the high achievement of being a medical doctor enough for you? What drives you to keep setting such high goals for yourself and then reach them? What drives you, Jeffrey?
It's fun, it's meaningful, and it's accomplishable. See, as my education actually evolved, I learned very quickly that as a physician, you get to make a difference in the lives of individuals, one person, one patient at a time. Subsequent to that, I got a master's in public health from Harvard and got a business degree and a public health degree. And I learned that public health is about taking care of communities. And even as a prominent physician, your scope of difference, being able to make a difference, is relatively limited. But public health professionals come in many different forms. Consider Bill Gates. He's a public health professional. With the power of the checkbook, he's able to address millions of lives. Our communities and communities around the entire world, which is why my public health practices span the globe, is about being able to make a difference wherever the need exists and wherever my assistance is requested. And over the course of my career, I certainly have developed the education and the expertise. I have the experience, and I have access to resources and other experts in various contents to be able to go to places like Indonesia and Tokyo and South Africa and to help governmental entities, large corporations, multinationals, or just communities, as I have done here in the United States and 36 states across the country. So wherever the opportunity exists, whether it's responding to a natural disaster or whether it's being proactive and helping to build a healthcare system or being innovative at the beginning of an initiative such as the Affordable Care Act and putting best practices in place to get those goals achieved, it's truly been a joy to be asked to participate in that process. It's not weighty at all. It's actually truly a blessing, and something that if you're going to have one life, why wouldn't you want to perform at the highest level of your capabilities? And that's by no means to disparage the beauty and connections that are made by taking care of individual patients. But if you have the ability to do more, then you probably have a responsibility to get in, particularly where there are things such as healthcare disparities, shortages of healthcare and other things, and knowing that you can step into that void and make a difference actually becomes a calling. And I've heard that call.
That is really beautiful and so impressive. And that you are still dedicated to medicine, and even on a global scale, and then still doing your other activities and interests. Like, I hear that with your fraternity, A Phi A, Alpha Phi Alpha, that you have started an endowment of some sort along with the university. What's that about?
I thought you were going in a different direction with the various activities I have with Alpha Phi Alpha. But yes, actually, I and a group of brothers at Northwestern created the Alpha Mu Endowment Fund, and we raised over $100,000 for student scholarships. I've been very big on the idea of providing scholarships as a means up. I am certainly an example of that. So we did the same thing when I was president of NUBA. We created the NUBA Achievement Scholarship as well, which raised several hundred thousands of dollars, over $300,000 in pledges, and over $100,000 that actually have already been given out to students. But yes, that was about 15 years ago with Alpha Phi Alpha, in which we created that endowment fund, and we've been giving out scholarships to students ever since. Very proud to have had the fraternity lead the way on campus for that particular initiative.
What's your greatest inspiration? What inspires you?
Inspiration?
Yes.
I'm constantly inspired. Every single day I get up. I have, if you read the book 72, there are 72 hours in the day. I talk in terms of 72-hour-isms. My team always calls it stuff, fill in the blank stuff, Jeff says. But, I am fueled by inspiration. Inspiration is the fuel for my perspiration. I jump out of, one of the things I always say, I jump out of bed in the morning and I fall into bed at night. I just love life. I love the challenges. Now, if you ask me what my greatest inspirations are, well, of course, they're the things that you would expect them to be. Life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, family, friends, having made a difference, having feedback. And that's something that you never ask for, but it's so nice. I was joking yesterday with someone. It's almost a hashtag. I've gotten almost a dozen different individuals who've sent me copies of my book at their end table with their bed, the 72 Hours book. And we're talking surgeons and business professionals. People really seem to take the work that I've done to heart, and it seems to have impacted their lives. And when you get that type of reverberating feedback, it's meaningful in a way that it goes far beyond the concept, hey, I have a great idea, let me see if it works. So once again, there's a constant there, just as exists with my public health work or with my entrepreneurial efforts, just knowing that I'm plugged into something that appears to be meaningful and appears to be helpful and appears to be working is it all by itself. But, I will tell you one story that kind of illustrates what inspires me most. I mentioned I have a 17-year-old son. And if you did some math, I mentioned that I was president of NUBA, the Black Alumni Association at Northwestern, starting in 2014. And knowing the history that we had at Northwestern and so many others of us had at Northwestern, one of my major inspirations for becoming president of NUBA was, let me check this place back out, because I have, at that time, a 13-year-old son who may end up being a wildcat. So let me go look under the hood at Northwestern, and if I can improve the university or contribute to the improvement of the university in any way, I actually have 4 years before the Bursars offers commemoration occurs and 5 years before my son conceivably would become a wildcat. So let me see how that works. So I look at my children. I have a daughter who's on the autism spectrum. And that's an entirely different conversation. So looking at the kids allows me to look at the future and wondering what type of world they're going to migrate into, and as someone who is part of the leadership generation of this country now, or maybe I'm younger than that, maybe right before then, just wanting to use whatever platforms I have to make whatever part of the world I come in contact with or am able to control better for my kids and everyone else's kids that really needs to have institutions and infrastructure in place so that they can live better lives than we did. Because I always hope that, my son is an improvement on the model that I represent.